Bolton is a borough steeped in industrial heritage. The borough covers about 24 square miles and had 247 mills at one point, of which 108 remain in some form. It was home to some very prominent industrialists who owned grand halls and manors. The borough resides on several ridges and hills, giving breathtaking views on clear days. It also has several areas of natural beauty which allow people to explore and revitalise. This cycling route will take you through several of each, allowing you to enjoy the rich heritage and sights it has to offer. The road leading up along Dean Brook is one of the most picturesque nature scenes in the Bolton Borough. The origins of Barrow Bridge date back to when the brothers Robert and John Lord opened a cotton spinning mill here. They also built 13 cottages for the managers and key workers, which still exist today. Their original mill was water-powered, and Dean Brook was used to power the mill. In 1830, they sold the mill to Thomas Basley and Rupert Gardner. The new owners demolished the existing mill and built a larger steam-powered mill instead. Their enlightened industrialist ideas led them to create a self-contained community for the benefit of their workers. The result is a model village, Barrow Bridge. The village is characterised by its rural atmosphere despite its industrial origins. The houses are split into 3 distinct clusters with long rural stretches in between. The first one, on top of the hill, is the workers' model houses, along with the Barrow Bridge Institute. Further up the Barrow Bridge Road are the original 13 cottages built by the Lord brothers. Finally, the managers' houses are located as far away as possible from the mill's chimneys at the top of the road, just before Barrow Bridge. Today, as you walk up, you will see there are also many newer developments and houses which do not relate to the original construction of the village. The village had attracted the attention of many people, including Prince Albert, who visited in 1851, and Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, who visited in 1841. Disraeli was so impressed that he based the fictional village millbank on Barrow Bridge in his book Coningsby, published in 1844. The mills were sold to William Callender in 1862, and following his death in 1876, the firm was declared bankrupt. In 1913, the mills were demolished, and the village suffered a period of neglect. Luckily, the area was noted for its natural beauty, in which many of the trees are conservation registered. The village attracted many visitors from around the borough and beyond. The villagers saw a business opportunity here and became hosts to these visitors, providing refreshments and guided tours. The water reservoir, which was created for the benefit of the mill the Lord brothers built, lies just behind the new houses in Barrow Bridge Road and has turned into a serpentine. Locals were able to rent boats for pleasure. In 1970, the village was declared a conservation area protected by a greenbelt status. It became an area of particular landscape value. The long industrial building you walk along is one of only 2 remaining main buildings of what was once a huge complex of similar structures, home to the Horridge Loco Works. Horridge had seen a jump in its population when Horridge Bleach Works established its factory here in 1777. The population has grown slowly and steadily since. The next leap in population came when another major employer established its works here. This time, it was the Locomotive Works. Horridge was positioned on a major road between Manchester and Lancaster. Travel was usually by either the canals or road. At the time, the toll paid for passing Horridge was 4p, about £15 in today's money. The railway arrived at Horridge in 1870 when the railway station was opened, located where the station park is today. This was part of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway L&YR company line. When the directors of L&YR needed to move their factory in Miles Platting to a more significant site, they eventually chose a location just south of Horridge Station. The land was purchased at a public auction for £36,000, over £30 million today. Along with the works buildings, there was a need to create homes for up to 1,400 employees. These houses include Hawkshaw Street, Fairbairn Street and others, which were built next to the loco works. The construction of the works starting in 1885 involved people from all around the county and from Ireland. This created friction between the work teams, as the Irish workers were paid halfpence less an hour. Other disputes between the workers and the management led to a 12-week strike. The people of Horridge donated food to the striking families. Despite all the problems, the works started operating in 1892. The facilities built were extensive. The erection shop was the main building and had room for 90 engines and 30 tenders. To help with the assembly of the locos, 20 cranes, each capable of lifting 30 tons, were installed. In addition, a miniature train was used with an 18-inch gauge. The building you see in front of you is Ridgemont House, built as the Chief Mechanical Engineer's office. The site played a vital role in both World War I and World War II. During the wars, the works produced armaments and parts for tanks and aircraft. At the Horridge Heritage Centre, you can find a range of relics from this era and a scale model of the original works. Overall, they produced 406 Matilda heavy tanks, 454 Centaur and 30 Crusader cruiser tanks. King George VI and his wife Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, visited the works in 1940, recognising their contribution to the war effort. The loco works closed in 1988. Since then, it has served as an industrial estate for various companies. Many of the original buildings were demolished, with the remaining buildings still in use today. The works produced 1,835 standard gauge locomotives, 169 diesel locomotives, and repaired over 50,000 locomotives in its lifetime. The town of Blackrod deserves your attention, as its history and prominence go beyond what meets the eye. With beautiful views of Horridge across to the northeast, the high ridge the town sits on dictates the peculiar layout of a single main street, where you'll see all its hidden gems. Historians suspect the Romans had a station here due to the town's unique topography, although there is no evidence. In the 1950s, there were limited excavations allowed in the town. The work found evidence of a castle here in the Middle Ages, as some masonry remnants were found in Castle Croft. These have now disappeared. The excavations found further evidence that supported this with the discovery of coins and other artefacts. The earliest records of the Blackrod Manor show that the feudal lord of the manor was William Peveril, who held the title in 1125. The Crown confiscated the manor from 1153 to 1190 due to the lord of the manor's indiscretions. It then passed through many prominent local noble families, including the Ferrers and Bradshaws. In 1996, the manor was bought in auction for £8,500, allowing the buyer to use the Lord of the Manor title and giving them some mining rights. Previously, the title was held by Anthony Lindsay, Lord Balnuel, the heir to the earldom of Crawford and Balcars. The town is located along what was once the road from Manchester to Chorley. Blackrod was a significant coal mining centre, sitting between the Bolton and Wigan coalfields. The population increased steadily from about 1,600 in the 1801 census to 4,234 in 1881. The decline of the coal mining and textile industries in later years caused the population to decline. Additional changes in employment in the area, with the establishment of the Horridge Loco Works and the construction of the Blackrod train station, made the town more accessible. This allowed people to easily commute to work, thus converting Blackrod into a dormitory town for people employed outside of it. Today, the town has grown further with the construction of residential estates. Even so, you'll still find some of its historical charm around the town. Horridge is a small town with an important industrial past. It rests peacefully northwest of Bolton in Greater Manchester. Historical records indicate the area had initially been a forest or chase for the barons of Manchester since the 11th century. A chase is an area that has been specifically reserved for hunting and gathering activities. In 1322, the area was extremely valuable due to the diversity of tree species and natural resources. Therefore, individuals who wished to hunt or forage had to obtain a licence. Due to its strategic location and proximity to rivers and other water sources, naturally and over time, the densely wooded areas were cleared to make way for an agricultural township. Records show in 1473 there were only around 4 tenants' holdings, revealing that the population was still incredibly small. A church has been located in Horridge since around 1552. Whilst the church was a relatively modest building, it contained 3 bells. The bells were paid for by the townspeople and were sadly left unhung. Until 1775, Horridge was a small village with about 100 households. Things changed when Wall Suture's bleaching works opened their premises east of the town. Many people who were employed by them also moved to live here. The large works needed a significant water source. The Rivington reservoirs were built for that purpose, requiring more working hands to maintain them. By 1881, the population had grown to over 3,750. In 1884, Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway chose Horridge to become home for the Horridge Loco Works. They constructed a massive complex of buildings, employing many skilled workers. This gave another push to the town's population, bringing it to over 15,000 in 1901. 100 years later, the population was over 19,300. During World War II, German bombers targeted the Loco Works, using Rivington reservoirs and Rockhaven Castle as markers. A planned raid by German bombers sent to destroy the works in July 1942 failed due to low clouds, causing the navigators looking for the markers to miss them altogether. In recognition of its industrial heritage, the town's motto is Copia es labor, which translates from Latin as Industry brings prosperity. Horridge is well located to travel across northern England and Scotland. Just next to the town is the M61, making it in easy reach of many other towns. Horridge has been home to many noble folk throughout history, including the creator and writer Lawrence Anderton, who wrote the hymn Jerusalem, My Happy Home. Horridge was the birthplace of several important footballers too. The most famous, Paul Mariner, passed away in July 2021. He appeared in the England squad 35 times between 1977 and 1985, scoring 15 goals. On the subject of football, the Bolton Wanderers Stadium is located at the outskirts of the town. It provides a first-class venue for various sporting events. Walsuches is a small community that was established in the late 18th century. The Ridgway family had previously owned a bleachworks factory in Bolton until it burned down in 1775. Woolsuches was chosen as the new site following the fire. The proximity to the neighbouring streams and an abundance of land made the location perfect. Although it's not clear where the name Woolsuches comes from, it's generally thought to simply translate from weller and sock, meaning to make wet or damp in Old English. This is probably due to the number of water sources found in the area. The site was further developed by the Ridgway family between 1828 and 1873. The main power to the bleach work was provided by a 10-horsepower steam engine. The engine was located in Gingham House, nestled between the trees and outside the main industrial buildings area. If you look at a picture of the site from above, you'll notice several ponds and water reservoirs used for the bleaching process. The Ridgway family tried to help the workers establish their life here as much as possible. They created a club that assisted workers to buy or rent properties. These houses are still called club houses as a result and can be seen opposite the parish church. The family expected their workers to work hard. At the height of their success, in the 1830s, workers would work until 2 or 3 a.m. They'd sleep in their work area and return to work at 6 a.m. Employees were kept under a strict code of conduct, and any offence was treated seriously. A worker who stole £20 in 1802, about £23,000 today, was transported to Australia, and several other people were executed for stealing cloth. Bleaching works were specialist factories that were an integral part of the pre-treatment of cotton. Bleaching cotton is required because the natural cotton fibres contain colourants that impair the final product's quality. It also makes the cotton easier to dye and stitch. The bleaching process involves washing the fabric in sodium hypochlorite and later hydrogen peroxide. This breaks up the chromophores, pigments, responsible for colorization, making them unable to reflect light. In 1933 the works closed and the site became derelict. In 1950, Archon Engineering took over part of the site. The area was later redeveloped for residential use, which is what you see today. This charming edifice is Ridgemont House. Characterised by its white exterior, the building dates back to the early 19th century and it's 2 stories high. Built for Thomas Ridgway, a founder of Woolsuches Bleach Works, the house stands opposite the bleach works. It's far enough away from the site to be private, but overlooks the entire area. From the entrance, you'll notice the charming curved semicircular porch that's supported by 2 Doric columns, characterised by their smooth capital. There are several points of interest to admire here. One is the interior staircase that contains several delicate iron balusters. Today the building is a Masonic Hall, as you'll notice from the Masonic symbol in the pediment over the entrance door. It's also used as a wedding, conference and events venue. The building has been Grade 2 listed since 1986. This perfectly picturesque and charming stretch of ancient woodland is Horrocks Woods. It's also known as Bolton View. The area is nestled neatly within the foothills of Winter Hill. On a clear day, you'll be lucky enough to view Jodrell Bank Observatory and potentially much further. This quaint haven has become extremely popular with locals, cyclists and dog walkers. It's the perfect place for a quick getaway from modern-day stresses. Here you'll see a variety of creatures, including rabbits, woodpeckers, bats and badgers at night, not to mention the elusive barn owls at dusk. The site itself is a designated Site of Nature Conservation Interest, SNCI. With a range of flora and fauna to admire and several trails and paths, The woodland is extremely popular with both locals and visitors. So, if you're looking for a quick escape and need to get back to nature, Horrocks Woods is most definitely worth a visit. It is probably the most prominent manor house in the Bolton area, and once you enter its grounds, you may see why. You can access the grounds when the house is open if you walk around the right-hand side, allowing you to see the house from the side facing the town. Situated on top of a hill with views of Bolton from the east yard, Smithhills Hall is at least an 800-year-old manor house. So old, in fact, that the exact date of when it was built is unknown. The Radcliffe family bought the hall in 1335, while the first record of the word Smithhill, or Smithel, then, dates back to 1322. In 1369, the hall was passed down to William Radcliffe's son, Sir Ralph Radcliffe, High Sheriff of Smithhills and MP for Lancashire. Smithhills Hall remained in the Radcliffe family until 1485 and was passed to the Barton family, who owned it for 200 years. Robert Barton, the first to live in the hall, was a wealthy wool merchant. He added the west wing and the family's crest, or elements of which, including acorns and deer, can be seen around the house. It was then bought by the Bellasyse family in 1659. By 1801, the hall had fallen into disrepair. It was purchased by the Ainsworth family, who rebuilt the hall. 3 generations of this family owned the hall. George Devey, an architect, designed many of the improvements after Richard Henry Ainsworth inherited the hall in 1870. He also designed Smithhills Coaching House and the cottage for the coachman nearby. In 1938, the Ainsworth family had no choice but to sell Smithhills Hall. It was bought by Bolton Council for £70,600, which would be over £4 million in today's money. Later in the 20th century, Bolton County Borough used the hall as a council residential home and a day centre. In 1963, it became a museum, extending from the oldest parts of the building to the Victorian parts in the 1990s. By then, there was a renewed focus on the historical importance of Smithhills, as the west wing of the hall was restored. Smithhills Halls still open to the public with exhibitions, guided tours, as well as being used as a wedding venue. Bolton Library and Museum arrange special events celebrating various periods of the hall. One memorable event had celebrated the Tudor period, with activities aimed at children. During that event, visitors sang traditional songs accompanied by a lute, a stringed instrument with a deep round back, and played skittles. Smithhills Hall's said to be haunted and appeared on the ghost hunting TV show Most Haunted in 2005 and Great British Ghosts in 2012, when it appeared in the same episode as Hall i' the Wood. Of the many regular sightings of a ghostly nature at Smithhills Hall, it's often the ghosts of the Ainsworth family that may be seen, including that of Colonel Richard Henry Ainsworth. An interesting story is linked to a sign you will notice outside the withdrawing room. It refers to the footprint of faith, which is said to have been made by Reverend George Marsh when he was questioned by Robert Barton in his role as justice. Marsh was accused of heresy, being a Protestant, in 1555. During the inquiry, Marsh forcefully stamped his foot on the floor to affirm his faith that a footprint was left on the floor. With a bit of imagination, you'll be able to see it yourself. Just 5 miles outside of Bolton, you'll discover the charming village of Egerton. It's a conservation area due to the variety of ancient buildings and edifices within its boundaries. The name Egerton is likely to have been taken from a neighbouring farm that had the same name. While it was once part of Turton Township, it has since been recognised as a significant area in its own right. Passing through the village, you'll discover several delightful side streets, roads, public houses, churches, and an array of green spaces. As you pass along Blackburn Road, you'll notice several interesting places. Christ Church Hall. The church was built in the mid-19th century. It's constructed of stone, with a pitched slate roof. There are several beautiful features to admire here, including the rose window that faces Blackburn Road. Egerton House and Lodge. Several stone buildings make up Egerton House and Lodge that were built in 1860. It served as a residential premises for a local mill owner. It was bought and converted into a hotel, which was closed in 2014. Former Methodist Chapel and School. This delightful structure dates back to 1892 and is 3 stories high. Built of stone and noticeable via its prominent gable and pediment, the building is incredibly charming. Over the centuries, it has seen a variety of changes. It's now used as shops and flats. During the 19th century, the village was a lively and friendly place to live. It played host to several events, fairs, and was even home to legendary primitive Methodist brass bands. Bradshaw is a charming area located within the region of Greater Manchester and the Borough of Bolton. Brad derives from the Old English word, simply translating to broad, and skerga, shore, meaning copse. A copse is a term used for a small grouping of trees. Historical records reveal Henry Bradshaw initially owned the land in 1235. Throughout the centuries, the family continued to be important in Lancashire. As you pass next to St Maxentius Church, notice the war memorial. More interestingly is the lone tower on the left of the graveyard. The tower is from the original church built in the 1640s. The church you see today was built and consecrated in 1872. The memorial was erected to commemorate the residents of Bradshaw who lost their lives in both the World Wars. Bradshaw Hall. The porch you're standing next to was the entrance to the Bradshaw Hall. John Bradshaw, one of Henry Bradshaw's descendants, built it in the 1600s. However, his fortune didn't last. His investments and estate didn't provide for his large family that included 8 daughters. At the time, all his daughters were expected to marry and would have needed a significant dowry to marry well. John Bradshaw sold the hall to a distant relative, Henry Bradshaw, to generate some income. Henry owned the hall and the manor until the late 19th century, when John Henry Bradshaw Isherwood became the last lord of the manor. Look at the photo above and you'll notice the round door head. This was used by a couple entering the house, and you can still see the original one today. Walk a bit further into the wooded area and you'll reach a stream. This is Bradshaw Brook and was once the source of water to the local bleach works, established in 1834 by Thomas Hardcastle. He used 60 acres of land for the bleach works that he bought from the Bradshaw family. He also leased the hall and moved in as a tenant until his death. After the death of John Henry Bradshaw Isherwood, the Hardcastle family moved into the hall. The last resident was Colonel Henry M. Hardcastle. When he died in 1948, the Bleach Workers Association purchased the bleach works and conducted a survey. They found the house was infested with dry rot and was unsafe. As a result, the house was demolished in 1949. Halith Wood was built in the 16th century. Its name comes from Hall in the wood and is spelt how it's pronounced in the local dialect. The house was owned by the Brownlows in the 16th century. It was a manor house rather than a house for the gentry. One of its most famous occupants was Samuel Crompton, who invented his first spinning mule here. The spinning mule was first named Halith Wood wheel because of its origins, although later it was known as the muslin wheel and then the spinning mule. Halith Wood was bought by William Lever, 1st Viscount Leverhulme, in 1899. He restored it under the guidance of Jonathan Simpson and Edward Old. He then donated the property to the Corporation of Bolton in 1900. The house was Grade 1 listed on the 23rd of April 1952 and is one of 3 places in Bolton that are Grade 1 listed. The Grade 1 listing documents show Halith Wood is of exceptional historical importance. Interestingly, the gates and gate piers of Halith Wood were Grade 2 listed separately. These were built in about 1648 when the hall was extended. Halith Wood is said to be haunted. It was explored in an episode of Most Haunted in 2008. There apparently have been sightings of a grey lady, a white mist, and strange lights in the hall. Halith Wood is now a museum, so remember to visit. Mossbank Car Park, which is where you may have parked your car, is situated next to a large and enjoyable park. Mossbank Park was opened in 1928. It's 34.25 hectares and was awarded the Green Flag Standard in 2008 and 2009, an award given to public parks that maintain standards of good management and best practice. Mossbank Park is named after the Moss land, bought by the wealthy Ainsworth family, who built Halliwell Bleachworks and Mossbank House here. Originally, the park was part of Mossbank House that was also owned by the Ainsworth family. Peter Ainsworth built Mossbank House in 1796. The house was 4 stories tall with a library and 100 windows. Mossbank House was demolished in 1951 after falling into disrepair. The history of Mossbank Park is still visible, with a walled garden, an aviary with a historical tower which originally was used as an observatory, and some remnants of the bleachworks. John Horrocks Ainsworth Observatory was built in the 19th century that's now also known as Aviary Tower. Today there's also a playground, football pitch, bowling green, cricket pitch and tennis courts. A special area in the park designed for small children is called the Hive. It comprises a series of gardens, each with its unique habitat of wildlife. The park is ideal for children and families, with gardens, a rock garden, a picnic area and a miniature railway. The cafe is run by the Wildlife Trust. The railway, which can be ridden by children, has been an attraction at Mossbank Park since 1987.